In the dead of night and in the middle of San Francisco, one of the tech industry's leading creators desperately searched for help as he roamed the streets dying. But tragically, despite his best efforts to find help, no one came to his rescue, and Cash App founder Robert Lee would pass away hours later. In the aftermath of his death, the residents of San Francisco began to ponder if their city had finally become too dangerous. But as investigators tucked into the details of this case, they discovered that this attack was not random. So, what happened to Robert Lee? Did he know his assailant? And what caused them to strike? Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and today we're looking at a vicious story that happened downtown in San Francisco. By the way, Coffeehouse Crime is all about true crime, strange and chilling stories, and the best way you can support me is by subscribing to this channel. So, if you're a fan of coffee, true crime, or anything in between, please do consider subscribing. I also try to respond to most comments within the first hour of these videos going live, so please hit the bell notification too. Thank you. Before we continue, I want to thank Babbel, the sponsor of today's video. As many of you know, Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world, and teaches you how to have real-life conversations with other people, which means it teaches you to have proper discussions and not merely just learning words. With friends and family over in Germany, Babbel has helped me strengthen my ability to speak with them, which is rather fitting, by the way, because Babbel was actually founded in Berlin. The other thing that I love about it is that it's also been scientifically proven to help you start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Perfect for those of you going abroad in the not too distant future. Thanks to Babbel, my German is becoming much more proficient, and now I'm on B1 upper intermediate classes. My next lesson includes learning about cookies, pastries, and waffles, something I better learn to ask for pretty soon, because as it turns out, Nero has figured out where I keep them.
That looks like a cat has gotten into the waffles.
Personally, I wasn't too impressed, but he didn't seem to care.
Die Waffel.
Die Waffel.
Wollen wir heute Abend zusammen kochen?
Wollen wir heute Abend zusammen kochen? Click my link below or scan the QR code to take Babbel's quiz and save up to 60% today. What's more, Babbel offers a 20-day money-back guarantee. Thank you to Babbel for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back to it. And now with all of that out of the way, let's start this story then. Please, grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate. This is the case of Robert Lee. Welcome to San Francisco, folks. Now, I don't need to tell you this, but San Francisco is a city like no other, mixing natural beauty with urban sophistication. Often wrapped in fog, the iconic Golden Gate Bridge creates a very dramatic backdrop to this extraordinarily lively city. San Francisco's neighborhoods each have their own unique charm, from the historic streets of Chinatown all the way to the bohemian vibes of Haight-Ashbury. The city's cultural scene is also top-notch, with museums like the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art and a buzzing theater district making this place a haven for creative folks. And for all of you foodies out there, much like myself, San Francisco's food scene is absolutely incredible. The city offers a mix of restaurants that reflects its many multicultural roots, from Michelin-starred restaurants all the way through to popular food trucks. With thanks to its proximity to Silicon Valley, the city's tech-savvy vibe adds to its innovative and forward-thinking feel. The iconic cable cars, Victorian architecture, and stunning views from Twin Peaks all add to its rather unique charm. Yep, that's right, San Francisco pretty much has it all, with a mix of natural beauty, cultural richness, and progressive spirit making it undeniably enjoyable. That is, if you can afford the astronomical price tag that comes with it. And even if you can afford it, you're not necessarily in a safe place anymore. I mean, San Francisco has always been considered to be one of the safer cities in California. However, it has developed somewhat of a dark streak in recent years. And unfortunately, this story highlights the worsening problem that this city is facing. It was in the early hours of Tuesday the 4th, April 2023, that surveillance cameras across downtown San Francisco recorded what could only be described as a harrowing and horrific crime. At 2:35 AM, a well-dressed gentleman was seen staggering next to a vacant office building. Because it was so early in the morning, nobody was there to witness what was going on, But the more you look at this surveillance footage, the more you realize that he was not in good health. The man had tragically suffered multiple stab wounds, and in an ever-worsening state, he was desperately searching for another human who could help medically assist him and his deteriorating health. Without any luck, the man then tried to wave down a vehicle that was passing by. However, unfortunately, the driver did not stop to pay any attention whatsoever. Images from additional surveillance cameras showed the man stumbling before falling over, likely due to the loss of blood. But this was only after finding another person in a stationary vehicle and begging for help. To add to his efforts, he even lifted up his shirt to show his stab wounds, but tragically, this driver decided to speed away into the night instead. Paramedics were eventually notified of the situation, and when they did arrive, they realized that this man was in a very grave condition. Sadly though, after being rushed to the hospital, he passed away from his wounds several hours later. And with him no longer around to tell the paramedics or officers what precisely happened, he took all of his secrets and details to the grave with him. Oh, and by the way, to make matters even worse here, he was actually the one to seek help and phone the authorities, instead of all of those people he tried to wave down for support. So, who was this poor man? How and why did he have multiple stab wounds? And who precisely was to blame? Some of the answers to those questions unfolded in the coming hours, while others would take a little longer to unravel. And, well, let me tell you folks, you better buckle up for this one, because this story is wild. It turns out that the man in question was a well-known tech titan named Robert Harold Lee, or Bob Lee for short. Now, many won't actually know this, but Bob was actually one of Cash App's co-founders, and would then go on to become a pivotal employee of Square, the company. And so, with such a large audience, particularly in his industry, his death would be sure to leave many friends and fans devastated. Not to mention his two daughters, who are now faced with the harsh reality of growing up without a father. By sunrise, the news spread like wildfire, with many news stations reporting his death right across the country.
Breaking news that we're covering: a tech executive has been killed, stabbed in San Francisco near south of Market.
Yeah, so multiple news outlets now reporting that the victim has been identified as Bob Lee, the founder of Cash App and an executive of MobileCoin. We have KRON4's Will Tran live for us in the city with the latest on what we know so far. Will?
James, I'm in front of the San Francisco Police Department, and at this point, they have not made any arrests in this case, or they have released any description of the people who they are looking for. Now, about 24 hours ago, let me show you video of the scene. He was in the Rincon Hill neighborhood of San Francisco when police got a call about someone being stabbed at around 2:35 in the morning. They rushed out there. They spotted him. He was still alive at that particular time. They rushed him to the hospital, but because of the severity of his injuries, he died at the hospital. Tributes are pouring in from across the country and across the world for his contributions to the tech world. Not only was he behind Cash App, he also was part of Square, used by many people. Also, he was an executive at MobileCoin, based out of San Francisco. Back to you.
But before we find out what exactly happened to Bob, let's first understand who he was as a father, friend, and son. Born on December the 20th, 1979, Bob grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, alongside his brother, Tim. Now, Bob was quite the software engineer. In fact, it was noted that he attended Lindbergh High School, where he wrote a 3D rendering engine. He later graduated and then worked for Southeast Missouri State University before moving on to Microsoft. By 2003, he had moved on to work for AT&T as a technical architect. And by 2004, he had found himself working for Google. Software frameworks, Lambda expressions, and process virtual machines. All of that technical jargon that most normal people don't understand, including myself. But Lee was a crucial architect and contribution to all of them. It was in the year 2013 that he helped build Cash App and then Square Cash. And to add to his ever-growing diversity, he even had his hands in stocks and cryptocurrency. So, seriously, what hasn't this guy touched? He was a technical genius, and quite frankly, he seemed to know it too. In fact, to show the level of balls that this man had, Bob was actually approached by Twitter's founder, Jack Dorsey. But after being offered a job next to him, Bob would actually turn it down, responding with, "You can't afford me, Jack." Interesting side note here, but Bob also had polydactyly, meaning that he likely had an extra finger on his hands. His Wikipedia also states that he separated from his wife in the year 2019. Now, I do find it kind of funny that both of these facts were put together in the article. It's kind of like a hall of fame as to what he had separated from. One wife and 2 fingers. However, in all seriousness, Bob and his ex-wife would often keep in touch, and whenever asked why the two separated, they would often respond with, "Because we love each other," accepting that, although they did love each other's company, they were too similar to be together. Despite their separation, Bob kept in touch with both of his children on a regular basis, and he loved both of them deeply. And although they would settle in the Bay Area, he decided to move back to Miami to spend time with his father. So, the man would often come back to San Francisco, not only to conduct business, but to see both of his children too. And of course, it was during one of those trips that, unfortunately, he would meet his demise. In a way, Bob's separation with his wife would ultimately contribute to his own death. But not in the way you'd expect, and certainly not at the fault of his ex-partner. And so, on that note, let's talk about the friendships and relationships that Bob fostered in his final few years. They say that Bob was a party animal, and that he loved to work hard and play harder. Interestingly, this would even be confirmed in his very own toxicology report, which showed that Bob had alcohol, cocaine, and ketamine in his system when he died. Friends would even claim that Bob was actually part of an underground party scene known as the Lifestyle, which included copious amounts of recreational drugs and lots of casual sex. You see, Bob attended many of those parties, and it just so happens that while at one of these parties, he met a woman named Khazar Momeni. Now, it's not obvious when the two actually started speaking to each other. However, it is known that they attended the same parties for several years before Bob died. As for Khazar, well, she is an Iranian national who settled in the US while she was a teenager. According to the reports that I could find, both she and her brother Nima fled with their mother to avoid a toxic father and husband in Iran. With no father in the picture, Nima and Khazar grew up in a relatively broken home. However, their mother did the very best she could to look after them. This did force her younger brother Nima to be fiercely protective of his sister, because, well, neither of them had a dad. Just curious, can you connect the dots yet? Anyway, through one party or another, Bob and Khazar eventually got to know each other on a more close and intimate level, which was around the same time that she introduced Bob to her brother Nima. Quite interestingly, Nima seemed to be quite similar to Bob, albeit at a rather less experienced level. That's because, according to Nima, he was an IT consultant and self-proclaimed tech entrepreneur. His LinkedIn profile indicates that he worked in technology ever since the year 2005, that he worked at Expand IT, and that he also lived in Emeryville, California, and that his company, which was founded in 2010, partnered with clients in healthcare, finance, and other markets. Now, here's the contrast. Some colleagues and neighbours described him as a kind, professional gentleman who always seemed to be welcoming and charming. However, there also seemed to be a reckless and poorly tempered side to him too. Some described him as a short-fused man who always seemed a little bit off. It is noted that, in the year 2004, he was charged with driving under the influence of alcohol. And only 7 years later, in the year 2011, Nima was also charged with driving with a suspended license and selling a switchblade knife. He pleaded no contest to the moving violation. The knife charge was ultimately dismissed, and he was then sentenced to 10 days in county jail and 3 years of probation. So, it is safe to say that, at least from time to time, he did seem to allow his impulsive behaviour to take over. And it's in this motion that we seem to circle back to Bob. Because, you see, Khazar, who was Nima's sister, was actually a married woman. In fact, she had even married a rather famous plastic surgeon named Dr. Dino Ilyasnia. Not only did the two of them live in a luxurious $2 million apartment, but Khazar also drove an AMG C63, which we'll come back to later on, and as far as those around them knew, the two lived a very happy marriage. However, it looks like Khazar was not only unhappy but dishonest too, because according to multiple friends, she would end up having a fling with Bob Lee. So, if you remember me talking about that underground party circle, well, yeah, turns out that Khazar was part of the lifestyle too, and this is where the two would ultimately hook up. Shifting the focus over to her brother, Nima was always overprotective of his sister, so of course, when word got out, he was not too pleased about Bob. However, strangely enough, this was not actually the first time that Bob had struck one of Nima's nerves, because as it turns out, he'd even slept with one of his ex-girlfriends only 2 years prior. So of course, that newfound anger probably had residual energy anyway. Surely now you can connect the dots and see where this is going. So, given the police reports and the information that we have, and barring some of the surveillance footage which is still yet to be released, this is what we know happened. At 12:39 AM on April the 4th, Bob Lee was seen entering the lobby of the Millennium Tower where Khazar lived with her husband. At 2:03 AM, a camera located in the elevator shows Bob leaving with Khazar's brother, Nima. Another camera shows them entering his white BMW Z4, which the two men then sped off in the same vehicle towards the 400 block of Main Street. Another surveillance camera then showed the BMW drive to a dark and secluded area southbound on Main Street. And although they parked just outside the bottom left of the frame, they can be seen exiting the vehicle. After standing on the sidewalk for approximately 5 minutes, one of the two men then suddenly lunged towards the other. Apparently, this footage is both too small and too grainy to see. However, it is suggested that, at this moment, Nima lunged forward and stabbed Bob 3 separate times, twice in the chest and then once in the hip. Interestingly enough, the two men then suddenly separated, both walking opposite directions. Soon after this, Bob can be seen staggering away injured. A short while later, Nima then returned to his car before driving away at a very high speed. On April the 4th, 2023, and at approximately 2:35 AM, San Francisco Police Department responded to 365 Main Street over a reported stabbing. Upon their arrival, they observed that Bob Lee was not only lying in the middle of the street, but also unresponsive. They also noted that he was bleeding uncontrollably from apparent stab wounds. As we know, he was then rushed to San Francisco General Hospital, where, unfortunately, he was later pronounced dead. Detectives canvassing the area found blood splatter on both of the sidewalks. They would also find additional evidence nearby, where a kitchen knife was found within the parking lot. It is noted that the knife was silver with a black handle, approximately 4 inches in length, and had what appeared to be blood on it. This was later confirmed to be the weapon used to murder Bob, and not only was the knife's location observed to coincide with where the surveillance camera captured Nima walking, but it also contained both Bob's and Nima's DNA. In the aftermath of this chaotic night, many speculated that Bob Lee's death must have been the tragic result of a random murder spurred by the city's increasingly violent crime rate. However, as we likely know by now, this simply was not the case, and instead, it was his very own friend who plunged the knife. A mutual friend and witness came forward to tell the officers that, on the night of Bob's death, she'd spent time with not only Bob, but also Khazar and her brother. And of course, this is what led the officers to check all surveillance cameras. And although officers were rather suspicious of Nima almost instantaneously, they were actually not too quick to arrest him. And that's because other witnesses came forward to tell them that not only was Nima short-tempered and enjoyed cocaine, but he was a massive weapons enthusiast too. And so, despite their concerns, they decided to keep a watchful eye from a distance for a while. In the meantime, they would prepare a SWAT team. And on April the 11th, 2023, officers assigned to the case were able to unlock both of Bob's mobile phones using passcodes provided by his family. It was at this moment that they noted a call log indicated a FaceTime call between himself and Nima via Khazar on the night that he was murdered. Not only that, but Bob's phone also showed a text message from Khazar saying, "Just wanted to make sure you're doing okay, cause I know Nima came way down hard on you. And thank you for being such a classy man handling it with class. Love you, selfish pricks." This further suggested officers' fears that perhaps Nima was the one to murder Bob. And so, on April the 13th, 2023, it was finally time. Nima was arrested early that morning, surrounded by police and an entire SWAT team. Now, Nima expected this, and so he gave himself up and allowed officers to arrest him while he planned on how to prove himself not guilty. Nima claims that on the day before Bob's death, Bob and his sister were partying with a group of other people nearby. Things seemed to get rather hazy from this party, because eventually, Khazar allegedly woke up naked and then contacted her brother and husband to come pick her up. Her story resulted in Nima believing that Bob had tried to persuade her to do inappropriate things, therefore resulting in him being livid with the man. Now, it may be no surprise to you, but Nima denies murdering Bob, while on the other hand, the prosecution has declared that this fatal stabbing must have been premeditated. They claim that Nima took a knife from his sister's kitchen and then used it to kill Bob at a secluded location, further highlighting that DNA evidence clearly links Nima to the knife, which was the same brand that his sister had at home. Although his defense team claim that Nima is not a flight risk, he has been denied bail and remains behind bars until his trial begins, which, as we know, is set for the late summer of this year. By the way, over the course of the last year, Nima has swapped several defense teams, asked for a change in venue, and even posed for photos in his prison cell that were later published by multiple news outlets. However, before anyone testifies, a jury must be selected to represent Nima's trial. Just like in many other high-profile trials, this might be a challenge. That's because both teams will have to agree on impartial jurors who have not been influenced by the massive media coverage. They will also have to hold their own opinions or prejudices about the case, which can be quite a tough thing to do here. But perhaps even more so, they will need to keep an open mind about whether Bob Lee's death is an ugly symbol of everything wrong with the city of San Francisco, or if this was just an isolated, senseless act of violence. To complicate the situation, Nima would not actually be the only one to be arrested. In fact, it was Khazar who was arrested in December of 2023 in downtown San Francisco. However, this was not related to Bob's murder. Instead, she had slammed her $150,000 Mercedes vehicle into several parked cars. Officers noted that at the time of her arrest, she was high on not only nitrous oxide, but fentanyl and cocaine too, adding to her rather loose-goose reputation. You can even see her arrest in this video right here, taken by a bunch of bystanders who seemed to be quite shocked by her actions. In fact, you can even see her whippet cans in images taken by the media.
Bro, she just hit my car, bruh. What the got going on, bruh? I look out the window and I see checking my shit. I'm like, hold on, bruh. She just fucked my whole shit up, bruh. Bruh, shorty off whippets and hella shit, bruh. That's Momeni, bruh. This up off the can of whippets, bruh.
As a result of her DUI, she was ordered to attend 2 Narcotics Anonymous sessions per week. However, as far as we know, she has flunked every single session. No doubt, although she remains unrelated and innocent to Bob's murder, her drug-fueled fiasco does indicate that, just like her brother, she has issues with controlling herself accordingly. Honestly, I feel really sorry for her mother, who has routinely experienced disappointment from both of her children, both of which she tried so hard to raise properly. Khazar has routinely supported her brother in court ever since his arrest, and so it's likely that she will be there during his trial. Again, Nima has pleaded not guilty to murdering Bob Lee, so I guess it was just a friendly hug with a knife. To be honest, I don't really know how he's going to get away with this one. I mean, witnesses and surveillance footage aside, his DNA was literally on the handle. Time is a healer and will usually reveal all of its secrets in the end, so I guess for now we're just gonna have to wait and find out. But as always, if there are any updates in the future, I will let you know first thing. It is also worth remembering that there are many rumours circulating around this case, many of which are seemingly untrue, so take what you hear with a pinch of salt and just see where this pans out. Regardless of the outcome, nothing can be done to bring this brilliant mind back to life. And although Robert did have his own shortcomings, he was undoubtedly an intelligent man who deeply cared about his friends. As one friend put it, Bob was in a different league. His level of intelligence contributed to the next level of the payment system. I mean, I guess that is technically his most monumental achievement. Bob really did change the way that millions of us pay friends and family. However, what is more important here is who he was to those who knew him. One friend recalls him standing up for her when another man tried to take her seat. And when the man asked Bob if he was willing to get his ass kicked just so she could sit down, he said yes. Bob was known to shower his friends and acquaintances with kindness. He was a generous, fun, intelligent family man. A family that he now tragically leaves behind. His children will now have to grow up without their father, and his ex-wife is left devastated after his death. Anyway folks, I'm going to leave this video here today. Before I go though, I've got two questions for you. First of all, do you think that Nima was the one to murder Bob? And secondly, how much time do you think he should receive behind bars? What are your thoughts? As always, let me know in the comments section down below. Also, if you want to catch me on Patreon, please check out the link here, or alternatively, find me on social media here. Thanks again to Babbel for sponsoring today's video. Click the link below or scan the QR code to save up to 60% today. Thank you so much for watching today, folks. I really do appreciate you being here. And as always, I'll see you again very soon for another one. Until that moment arrives though, remember to look after yourself, look after each other, and of course, as always, stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.